Okay, cool. That is us on YouTube now. So just in case people don't know, if you're not able to make it, we go live on YouTube for a free event. Usually I put the link on the website. If not, it's on Twitter, our Twitter handle, EdinburghJS. Welcome, everybody. Good to see familiar faces. Good to see new faces. I hope you all have a lovely evening. Tonight, I'd like to thank our sponsors for the pizza. We've got KPV Lab to thank. They've agreed to renew their sponsorship for another 6 months, so that's why we get pizza tonight. And thank you, Alan. For the live stream, his company Live to Air. Still not done. I know, but yeah. Your website, haven't done it yet for your new company, Live to Air? Giving you a shout out? Cool. Just a couple of kind of community announcements. In a couple of weekends' time, the 28th, Saturday, I'm running a code jam. This is an idea I had a few weeks ago, basically just to get people together into a room to make kind of personal or portfolio websites. I use the framework Astro to build the EdinburghJS website and the GlasgowJS website. I think it's great. It's really nice to get up and running for kind of a content-based website, like a personal thing like that. So I thought, why not kind of share that knowledge with people and then see what other people can come up with. So if you're interested in that, if you go to the Meetup group, then you can find a link to RSVP there. It will be held at Code Clan from like 9:30 a.m. on Saturday 28th. In advance of that, one thing that I think would be cool is we're running a Discord server at Scottish Technology Club. If you have a personal site or if you kind of like the design of something, take a note of it and shove it in the Discord server. Be like, hey, this is what I like about this. They do good articles, or their portfolio looks really good, or they've kind of got like this, I don't know, whatever cool thing, cool design that they've got going on. Because I think if we can share best practice, then we can kind of all learn together and kind of improve the level of what we're doing. So if you're interested in that, please do come along and give me a shout. Final thing is, I forgot to put out the little tags, but we are doing another draw for a Quokka.js license and a Wallaby.js license. I'll put out a little bit of paper over where the name tags were, and if you write your name on the bits of paper, I will do the draw after the second talk. So tonight we've got 2 talks, and the first one is from Harvey at FanDuel, who is going to talk about libraries at scale. So can everybody welcome Harvey?
Thank you, thank you. Is this? Oh, it's my laptop, okay. There we go. Okay, cool. Thank you. So I titled this like JavaScript libraries at scale. Jamie reached out to me and I had no idea what to call it. But I think while I was writing it, it'd probably be better called JavaScript libraries probably at FanDuel or an organization level. But regardless, thank you. My name's Harvey. I'm a senior software engineer here at FanDuel. I've been here for about 1 year writing JavaScript, TypeScript, Node, React sort of applications for, yeah, about 5 years. So I'm hopefully somewhat qualified to talk about some of this stuff. So what am I going to talk about? So when I was doing a little bit of research, right, I was online, I was trying to get an understanding of what other people thought about libraries at organizations, and a lot of people called it tech debt. So you're importing straight away, you're importing tech debt, and I kind of liked it, and it sort of mirrored how I felt about it. But the first part of the talk is going to be about JavaScript libraries, so like the ecosystem. So again, I'm sure it could be super relatable. I'm sure everyone here is used to libraries. Anyone who hasn't, because if you haven't, you're going to learn like so much. But so the first part is like, why do we use libraries? And then like, how do we handle using libraries here at FanDuel? Just again, at that organizational level. I have a lot of slides, so there's going to be a lot of that. So the second part is writing a library, right? So I, here at FanDuel, wrote a library about a year ago. I led a small team. It was a really interesting process, something that you don't get to do often. And what does that look like, writing a library in an organization, and then finally publishing a library. So again, if you haven't done that, that might be, hopefully it'll be something a little bit different. So to begin with, I got a few prereqs. I don't want to just sort of presume everybody knows every part of this. So again, super simple. What is a library? I just stole this from Wikipedia. I thought it was quite good. A JavaScript library is just a library. It's just a chunk of code that essentially import into your application. Either you wrote it or someone else wrote it. So how do we do that? So I'm just going to run through this. So you can just download it off the internet and then import it straight in with a script tag. I've only ever done this once professionally. Second one's a CDN. It could be hosted somewhere, so you're just downloading it. This is a bit better. You can actually download a different version of it. So I've got code Harvey package utils. It's a really good one. And then finally, so it's npm. This is probably what everyone's used to. So it's just a package registry. We publish, and then we can then download it, and you can run npmi or yarn if you prefer, and then import it, and then and then you can commit that really nice message. And then finally, the final part I want to run through is really important. It's just something to make sure you don't break your code or actually break someone else's if you're writing a library, semantic versioning. So the major is I'm going to download, basically letting the person know that like this is going to break your code. It's not backward compatible. A minor is a new feature. So if you're creating a new feature, you're going to set the second number. And then finally, the patch is like a bug fix. So it's just the third number. Again, that's really, I'm just running through that just for later on. I guess it's more important for when you're writing one. And not everyone follows this. So why? I mean, I guess the first one, obviously quite obvious, is speed of development. You're not having to write your own code. Actually, when I was a junior, at my first company I worked at, I joined and they were like, okay, we're gonna build at the front end. It was an agency, right? So we didn't really care. We were like wanting to use the latest technology. I had just come from uni. I had no idea. Like at university, we built everything. He was like, we're gonna use MUI, which is, so the lead's like, we're gonna use MUI, which is Google's React component library. It's great. He was like, and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like I was like, I want to prove that I'm worth hiring. So I went off and built everything myself, all the components, and he didn't know. I showed it to all the stakeholders, and they were like, yeah, it looks good. It looks like what it should look like. Little did they know I just wrote the whole thing myself. He came, the tech lead came around, looked at the code, and I was like, pretty good, right? Like I didn't use MUI. Like that's a good thing. And he was like, no, that's terrible. Like you're gonna have to rip that out. And I was absolutely gutted, right? Because essentially he had to go and read all my code. And it was never going to be as good as Google. I'd looked through their source code. I'd done my homework, but it never was going to be as good. So it takes me on to my second point. It's like abstraction. My lead had to go through and read every part and understand it. With the library, we didn't have to care. Like you just import it and use it, pass in the props, do everything you need to do, right? And mine wasn't documented, right? And my code barely was. And with Google, you can just, you read the documentation, it's got code snippets, it's really useful. Mine had none of that, but I had done it, which at the time I was extremely proud of. Tested, mine wasn't, Google's is. Expertise, and then finally, I mean, I probably had none, but I'm gonna move away from this. So you're gonna have people who are experts in the field writing these libraries, something that's if you're working in a certain domain, you might not know anything about it. Just leave it to them. There's no reason for you to do it. So anyway, so you get all of these points. So speed of development, it's abstracted, well documented, it's tested, and it's built by amazing people, right? You get all of that. All of that for free, right? Oh. Is it free, right? Not really. We get all that, but now, for example, that company were tied to using Google's MUI. So what I'm saying is maybe my solution in the end, in the long run, was actually better, right? So by installing the package, by installing other packages, we're starting off with a larger bundle size, right? Which is never good, right? You're bundling code to the end consumer, and it's a lot slower and on their device. If it's a mobile device, right, it's only got so much room. So that's something to think about when installing. And second one is security. You don't actually know what's happening in that package, right? It might be, unless you're reading through all the source code, which no one does. You're not really sure what's happening. And in an organization level, that's never really that good. Lack of support, there might actually be none. So they might have wrote it 4 years ago, and you might have installed a package from someone just down the road, and they're not looking at it anymore. Or you might have installed something that another dependency needs, and then it needs a different version, and then you're stuck. You're kind of stuck, not sure what to do, and you've got it in your code base. Steep learning curve, not all APIs, not all libraries are really the API of the library, it's not easy to understand. The documentation actually might be bad. There's no support again, essentially you're going online and there's nothing there and you're speaking to your teammates and they're like, I don't know either, and then you're looking, you're not sure, and there's not anything good online, or the documentation's even outdated. I've had it where I'm on a pretty popular library, but I'm looking at the version 2 of the docs and the version 3 is not ready, even though the version 3 of the code's out. So I've run into that and I'm using deprecated methods, and yeah, that's pretty common. And then this is super common. So dependency hell, right? That's, I've got a good example here. So I just ripped this straight from NPM. So essentially is when two packages, we've all run into this, right, on NPM, where you have two packages needing a different version of a library. NPM does a pretty good job of handling this, but it's not perfect. You'll still end up installing a library and then it telling you need another version of another library, and then you're installing that version, and then you end up on Stack Overflow and then GitHub issues, and then the forum just ends and there's no help, right? But NPM does a pretty good job at helping you with this. Again, I ripped this straight off, but it'll install two versions, right? So if A and C need B, it'll install version 1, but if C needs version 2, it'll install version 2. And then similarly, it'll also hoist in that new version, it'll hoist B version 1 up, so then any other subsequent package you install, you're going to be using one from the root level. But you can still end up in times like this without actually realizing, so you don't even know that you're installing 3 of the same packages. You wouldn't actually know unless you looked. But again, it doesn't throw any errors, but it's contributing to your bundle size, right? So again, so is it really free, right? Increased package size, security, lack of support, steep learning curve, and then dependency hell. So what can be done, right? And what do we do at FanDuel to manage this? Well, we try. It's not an exact science. It's something that we manage. It's something we deal with, and we have sort of set guidelines, or we try to. Especially, I work on sportsbooks, so that's kind of what I'm referencing here. To try and avoid this error, right? The problem. So the first one is, can we avoid adding the package? Do we actually need the package, right? We're basically trying to understand the problem better. Maybe we can write it ourselves. I think I've seen this. That's been said to me so many times at different organizations, right? Can we roll our own? Can we rewrite the package, or can we write something a bit smaller? Can we write a part of the package more, right? Can we, rewrite a part of the package? Do we need every method? Are we installing every method? So that's kind of the first part. If yes, we're not just gonna write something for the sake of it. We're not gonna rewrite something that's already really good. We'll hit the second sort of process, and that's a package review. Again, it's just basically looking at the inverse of what the bad stuff I talked about, right? So is it well documented? How many dependencies does it have? Is it well supported? Another important one is, especially with libraries now, is the modules. Is it bundled as common JS, or is it bundled as ES module? That's particularly important for tree shaking. Do we have the ability to just import? Do they have the ability just to import the code we want, right? To bundle the code we want. We're not bundling the whole library. For example, I think old Lodash was like that. It was bundled in common JS, meaning you're just getting the whole library, even if you're just using one util, right? I think that's been fixed though. But yeah, that's a really important part, especially when writing a library. So we decided we like the package. As an engineer, I like the package. It looks really good. I've gone through these steps. I think it's really good. The next part is more of a department review. So taking it to the department, maybe a community meeting, or even just your team, showing your findings, essentially, being like, this is what I found, I like it, I want it for this reason, it will fix this, and this is why we should install it instead of rewriting it, right? So it's trying to get a better understanding from a broader amount of people, right? And again, if that's good and everyone's happy, we're going to merge it into the code base, right? So, and this part here is just being a good citizen, right? It's just communicating out to department. I have installed this package. There might be problems. Shout early, maybe if we're in Slack, just shout in Slack that this is this might break the build, or might break the tooling, or you just don't know. You can't guarantee, right? Even if you've tested it or you've used it, you're now relying on like a third-party dependency. So this is a pretty important part early on, so we can get it fixed early. So external from installing a package, this is a process that is happening consistently, or constantly. It's a dependency review. So reviewing what dependencies we currently have in the code base. Are they stale? Are we still using them, or can we do better? I think you could automate this, but it's trying to understand, is there better packages out there, right? Like that will suit our needs, right? So, and obviously everything's evolving extremely fast, so that's why we kind of constantly have this. And then the last point of this is a planned update cycle, right? We don't just see that like a new version of a package is out, like a major version, something that could break the code base. We're not just going to go and install that like just in case, well, especially a single engineer just taking it upon themselves, like I want to install the next major version of, you know, some library. We actually carve out some time and make sure that we are sort of following the process to make sure that we're not actually going to break anything. And if something does, we have the time to deal with it. So again, yeah, just to kind of go over that, don't add it. Can we roll our own? Package review onto a department review, and then communicate it out. And then a review of our dependencies, an ongoing review, and then a planned update cycle when need be. So that's just a quick run through of yeah, just using libraries, right, and how we handle it, and the pain it can cause. But the next part is actually writing a library, right? So I wrote a library for FanDuel. It was a really interesting experience. I'd never done it before. I learned quite a lot, like that I hadn't, like the difference between writing application code and then writing code for an organization, especially writing code, especially writing a library for other engineers, right? I think that's quite scary. Like, I guess the end consumer, they don't know what you're doing, but other engineers, they do. So it's really important. Also writing the API, like for them to consume it. And there's, yeah, it was just, I'd never done it before. I'd done a lot of Googling. I'm hoping this section, I mean, I can't touch on everything because there's so much, especially like at an organization level. There's a lot of like pipelines and all that stuff, but I can quickly go through, I mean, some of the main points. I'm also going to open up VS Code or my terminal, so hopefully, and then show you something there. But to begin with an organization, I guess, which this is going to differ from writing a normal library, is you kind of, you know the why, right? So before you can do the, like, how are we going to do it, what are we building, you got to know why are we building it. So I guess it starts with communicating between the teams, so yourself, if you're writing the library, and then another team implementing that library, is sort of understanding, like, why are we building this? Why can't we just build this into our code base? Is there a reason we need to abstract it out? From there, it's going on to like understanding the timeline, right? So the constraints that we're going to be under, and then the next point is, this isn't normal with a library as well, as you know the environment that it's going to be built in. Like, you normally know where you're going to be building and what app or what service, right? With libraries, you don't normally have that. You're normally building it for anyone to install, or even just like application or the server side. APIs, so that's just the communication between application code and then the library code, so you can sort of establish how they're going to consume it, what methods they're going to use. And then understand the peer dependencies, right? That's really important. So peer dependencies are dependencies that you're going to rely on in the library, but you're going to expect the application code to have, right? So that means you can sort of build the library as lean as possible. And that so it leads to the, sort of this part, right? This is how I did it. I mean, this is surefire not the best way to do it, but I was once I worked all that out, I was like, right, let's just write some diagrams, right? So like, this is probably a terrible example, but you can do sort of relationship diagrams, and I've got an example of method 1, 2, and 3. So that's just sort of that would be like the application-facing methods, and then you can sort of write out all your relationships or all that sort of stuff. That's basically good for communicating to like your manager, to be like, this is what I'm building, or like, here's the point I'm at. You can also communicate out to other teams or your team to be like, this is my plan. Tell me if it's terrible or if it's really good, or if you like it. So I thought it was a really important part of my process when doing it. But again, I'm not sure. It's just what I was doing. So from there, I'm actually going to open up a few things. I've got like a sort of fake environment to sort of run through and to go over a few of the main points of what it could look like having a repo that's going to serve as, I guess, as a library, right? Forgive me, I'm going to take like 2 minutes while I try to get this working. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to bring up, oh, doing well. Right, okay, cool. I've got a package called Harvey package. I'm just going to open up VS Code. Oh, it's opened up down here. Nice. Right, okay, cool. Can anyone see that? Wow, bright. Cool. Right, I guess to begin, we'll start with the package.json, right? Because that's where everything starts.
Can you vote the text size?
Yes, I can. I might make this full screen. That might be easier. Right, okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so this is a pretty basic example, but I think it will be good to sort of run through. So I'll just quickly run through package.json. Obviously, this is where NPM is sort of like trying to it basically understands what you want, like how you're going to publish. So your name is just the name of the package. As I mentioned, the version, it's at 1.2 right now. So I've kind of like blue peered this where I've already done it at home. Yeah, so it's 1.2. That's, again, really important. So it's got like 2 minor versions. This is extremely important, actually, for libraries, is how your main and your module. So your main is so your entry point to when you're installing the library. That's going to be your entry point file. Module is something a bit different. That allows you to have an entry point for an ES module. Engines, that's Node, essentially your scripts, usual stuff. Repository, yeah, all usual stuff. Dev dependencies, again, this is really important to focus on. I've got a lot there, but for how many? For no dependencies, right? But your dev dependencies are things you're going to be using that like you don't need to be bundled into the application or the library code. Again, that's really important for libraries. You want to make sure that the person consuming, like the application consuming it, is not consuming something they don't need, essentially. You've got your dependencies, but I have none in this example, which is good. And then your peer dependencies, I have none, but again, in that process of trying to understand, does the application need any peer dependencies, you would have that there, right? From there, it would be a process of creating again, being that you want it for an organization, it's trying to create an unopinionated code base repo, which basically means that any new engineer, any engineer coming onto it, it's not ending up creating their own sort of style of repo, right? So that, for example, is making sure they're all using the same version of Node. Here I've got like a .mvmrc file that you can just run mvmus, and you're all using the same version of Node, making sure that works. Second one is adding stuff like adding linters. So you've got, well, I've got, for example, Prettier. I've got a really, really basic example for like ESLint. I was like, give me the one that everybody is like standard. But you can go absolutely wild with this, obviously, right? You can go wild. You can have a much prettier RC, so you'll reformat it. Again, it's just making sure everyone who's in the team working on the library are going to all have the exact same sort of code standards, right? And that's in place like really early on. So I mentioned before, I mentioned about main and the main file in the package.json and the module. So I mentioned that like main would be your entry point for something like CommonJS. So if you're building a library out for server code, you would want to bundle to Common. Otherwise, you can bundle to ESM. However, so to do this, I actually, in this example, have a simple roll-up bundler. Again, you could go absolutely wild with this, but this is a really simple example. I actually think if I was going to, like when doing this, I would probably just use type. If you knew you were going to have, if you knew the library was going to be bundled into application code, just use TypeScript, just use the transpiler there, because that transpiles TSM anyway. Otherwise, I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm going to a JavaScript thing, I'm going to talk about TypeScript, but so I just used rollup. But you can see again, in the example, I've got an output file to so CJS and then ES. That's just the two different files. And then plugins, just some Babel transpiling into ECMAScript. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Literally super, super basic there, right? So if I run in here, if I run the build, oh, misspelled. Yeah, you can see, so it's outputted two files there. One is in CommonJS, and one's in ES. Yeah, so again, that's really important. Right, so you're at the point where you've got your code. By the way, that's literally just bundling that source code there, but I'll get into that in a minute, right? So that's just really, really basic code. So you've got to the point where you got it set up, you got it bundling correctly, you've got it bundling to the correct module. You're going to want to make sure that your code is well tested, right? Because that's one of the key parts of a library, right? It's 100% testing. So in this example, again, it's just, I've got it set up with Jest, just to unit test. There's an example for one there. Nothing fancy, just running Jest unit test, and then you can set up a script. Again, I didn't do it here, but you probably want to move this to sort of you want to move this script, this testing script into a pipeline. So you would run like npm test in your pipeline for when you're pushing or you're merging code to make sure no one's broken anything. But I haven't done that here. And then, yeah, basically that setup there is just running Babel because Jest runs in CommonJS, but I wanted to use the import statement. So it's very simple. So you set up your unit testing, that's all good. The next point would be how are you actually going to test your code? How are you going to test your library, right, before publishing? Maybe you don't want to publish it, maybe you want to just run it locally. To do that, I have two examples. One is npm pack, which just creates a tarball file. It's really good because it creates a more realistic example of how it would look when you publish it. So I'm actually going to briefly talk about this as well with .npm ignore. This is a file that works very similar to git ignore. It's basically every file you want to ignore when you actually run the publish command. npm pack adheres to this, right? So when you run npm pack, it's going to create a tarball file, but it's not going to include any of this. It's just going to include whatever, everything else, right? So I've got it including the dist and the package.json to make sure that the consuming application knows. So I'm going to show an example of this. To add to this as well is you're going to want to have a test runner, right? So you a test harness, right? You're going to want to have another application kind of simulating the app that you know you're going to be building in, right? So it means you can just have that running. You can then import it and use it and make sure it's all good, right, before you're publishing it. So I've done that as well, so I can show that. But to get a tarball file of this, you can just run npm pack. You can see that there, right? So Harvey package utils, that's just going to essentially package that up. If I then show in my talk directory, I have Harvey package, I have my presentation, and I also have my test harness. So I'm going to just move, Harvey package utils into the test harness. Actually, I'll go back to here. Yeah, okay, cool. So I'll just grab that, and then I'll move it into the test harness. Cool. And then if I list out, yeah, so that's fine. Essentially, all you want to do now is move that utils file into your package.json and then run npm install, and that'll just be added to your node modules. I'm not going to go too much into that. I'll go into the next one because I think the next one's a bit more useful. Which is running a symbolic link, which is symlink, or just running npm link, which essentially takes your whole package, so all of that. You run npm link, it creates essentially like a package in your global npm, and then when you run npm link with the title of the package in any other repo, it's going to add to your node modules and point to your global node modules, and that's super useful, right, for testing. So I'm going to quickly show that, and then yeah, so I think that sort of a better example than running this, because this is literally just, it's a bit frustrating when you're developing that you're going to have to run that command every time, move it into a test harness, run npm install. It's just a bit fiddly. So I'm going to move back into I'm going to move back into Harvey pack. Oh, sorry. Oh dear. Harvey package. So here I'm going to run can everyone see this before I make it a little bit? That's not going to do anything. Hold on. Zoom in. Yeah, probably better. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay. Great. Sorry. Yeah. It's no use me explaining it and we can't actually see anything. So, okay. Cool. So I'm in my package repo. I'm going to run npm link, and it's basically going to tell me I've added one package to something, right? So to see that, you can run npm. I can check. I can list out my global. Let me clear this actually because it'll be a little bit easier. Yeah. Okay. So I can run npm. I can list out my global packages. I need to set the depth to 0, and then I can check the links, right? And that should give you a good example, right? So it's showing the Harvey. My package is now in like the global space, but it's pointing to my talk directory, and yeah, my package repo, right? From there, I can then move into my test harness. Now, this test harness is just a React app, like nothing more. It's just I ran it with npm create React app, or yeah. So in here, I can then just run npm link and then the name of the package, right? Cool, right. So what that's done now is just add it to my node modules. So if I then list out, you can see my node modules. If I list out node modules and then Harvey package utils, yeah, so there's a good example. You can basically see that whole repo is now within my, is now actually within those node modules. So just run npm install on the test harness, and then that should just work as if it's just within there, right? Cool. So to do that, to get rid of that, you can just run npm unlink, and then just the name of the. Sorry, my typing skills are. Oh no. Yeah, so I can unlink that, and then the final thing to do is actually clear up your global space. Otherwise, it can get quite nasty. So I'm running npm. I'll remove from the global. I'm just literally removing the package I've already added, and that's the final part. There you go. Right. So that's kind of the process of how you actually want to run your test. I hope that made sense, but yeah, I hope that made sense. Yeah, so you can run that allows you the ability to test your package without having to actually ever you get the actual repo and run it, right? Which is really important.
So just a question.
Yeah, please.
Does the link command link it to a package that's already been referenced in the package JSON? Does it modify?
So when you run npm link, are you asking, is something added to package.json, like the dependencies?
No, does it link it to another package that is being referenced in the package.json? So I assume it doesn't modify the file itself.
No.
So does it link it to a package that's already there?
Oh, no. So essentially what happens is, so you run npm link in your repo, right? So you've got, you're creating a library. You run npm link there, and it creates a link in your global space, in your npm global, like your global downloads. It then points to that repo, and so when you run npm link within another, so in the test harness, I ran npm link and I passed in the name. It knows that that's a link. It's not actually in your, it's not really there. I don't really know the really low level of it, but it knows it's not there to look to your global space. And you could see when I was showing the example, I'm not sure if it's still there, but it points to the directory. So they're pointing to directory desktop, which is on code talk directory, right? It basically just knows where to look. So it stores all those files in your global space, and it knows to not look in its own node modules, but look in the global node modules.
So to follow up on the question.
Yeah, sorry.
I've written this library. Oh. You'd have to pass me the mic. So I've written this library. I've got tests I want to run.
Yeah.
And then I've linked it to my repo.
Yeah.
And then after all, I want to be able to run those tests. Does it mean that when I run npm install in the repo, does it mean that it's storing that information somewhere else from the package.json file? So the link to that library, I was just wondering, where is it being stored?
It's stored in the global space, but it's like I'm not understanding.
How does npm install know where to get that library from?
Cache. Think of the global space as cache.
No, it's cache. Okay.
Pre-filling the cache
Okay.
with something that happens to be local rather than sourcing it from public. It's just a link.
Just a link. Okay.
Yeah, it's not storing it anywhere.
I was
really.
just wondering how it works.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
all good. No, thank you. I appreciate it. That's good. Cool. Right, so, sorry, my computer stopped, right. The final part is I'm going to move in, I'm going to quickly do this because I realize the time. I'm going to move into, back into my package. I'm just going to publish something and then use it because I've actually, do I have enough time? Okay, I'm just making sure. I don't want to be like, stop. Okay, cool. So I'm going to move out this test harness. Where am I? Yeah, okay. Okay, cool. So I have a script that's just called release. I'm not going to run npm publish. Again, there's a final part is using a package called mp, which makes publishing libraries a little bit nicer. It does stuff where it runs your tests. It handles all the versioning, so you don't have to handle it yourself. And then it handles the tags. So if you're wanting to push tags to GitHub for your releases, and then finally it can actually create a release on GitHub, right? So I'm just going to run that now. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to change the code right here, just so we can actually see it, right? I've got a function called shout. I'm just going to quickly add to it. This is live. Great. Okay, cool. Now, I'm just going to run this. This should fail. I just want to show. So around MP, it's telling me publish a new version, but nothing's actually committed. But if I say yes, it's going to. So it basically gives me a list of, do I want it to be a patch, minor, major, pre-patch. Again, this just makes sure that I know what I know what I'm doing. I'm not just publishing anything to make sure I don't break other people's code. I'm just going to say it's a new minor version. Kind of run through the prereqs, runs git, yep, so that's basically going to fail. It's telling me that you haven't committed everything. Again, these are all things that are super useful that you wouldn't get as part of just regular npm publish. I'm just going to put added. It's not amazing, but I'm just going to run that again. Tell it yes. I'm going to publish a minor version. This shouldn't take long. I'm sorry. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. If this doesn't work, I'm just gonna probably end it.
It's a realistic description of what goes on in developers' life.
Yeah, I'm giving a realistic example of what this is.
I mean, this is actually so good. You're doing a live demo, and things are going wrong. So
Installing dependence. Did it fail at this point last time? Is this good?
the most accurate thing you could do.
Oh, it's running a test. There we go. Publishing package using npm. Going to create my tags, which are again really important for your releases. There we go. Cool. Right. So that actually automatically creates your release. I'm not going to go into that, but you can have your releases on GitHub tied to your package, which is great. So you can install them. And then the final part is I actually wrote this presentation in a JavaScript library. So I'm going to import this library into it and use it. It's like really meta. Cool. Right. Okay. Cool. Oh, I'm on a different terminal. Right. Right. Okay, I'm gonna go into my presentation. Oh, I've already got it open, don't I? Oh. Sorry, this is throwing me. Okay, cool. So yeah, so here's my presentation. I'm not gonna explain any of this, but I've got some code here that I can actually import into. So this is, without you realizing, there was a final slide there, but I'm going to then run npm install Harvey package, I think it was called utils. Oh no. Thank you. Oh, there we go. Right, cool. Okay, cool. So I've installed that. I can now just import that, shout from Harvey package utils. There we go. And then I can just, I'm going to create an element. Creating the element, I'll create h1. Cool. And then, yeah, okay. I'm grabbing the final slide. Final slide of the presentation. ID, yeah, okay. Document. I didn't anticipate being down here. This is, oh no, sorry, get element. This is probably absolutely painful to watch, right, okay. Okay, there we go. Oh, what, this is not working. There we go. We don't like the light theme. Right, okay, cool. So I can append the child, and then I'm gonna append the h1. Right, the final thing to do is, before I forget, is h1.inner text equals whoa. That's fine, it's not gonna matter. And then I can just pass in shout. Oh no. Brilliant, there we go. Now I'm gonna have to run the build. More bundlers, that's like so JavaScript. Forgot you guys are all here, right? Cool. All right, is it gonna work? I don't know. I've done it wrong, but it's fine, whatever. It's fine. There you go, that's it, that's all I've got. I hope that was somewhat, yeah, that was somewhat educational.
Awesome, cool.
Thank you.
Round of applause. Does anybody have any additional questions? Like, I'll take like 2 questions because.
Sorry, I didn't realize how long that would take to do the. I don't think I anticipated how long.
I have a
that
question
would take.
about licensing. With all these packages you're bringing in, with their own licenses, that are all different.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that the product you're shipping doesn't violate any of those licenses?
So I guess it's. I mean, that is part of the review, right? I missed that, but you want to make sure that you are. I guess every package normally has like you can have an MIT license, which is open for anyone to use. For example, that library I used for the presentation is MIT. Everyone can use it. Do you have? I feel.
But there are some that
Yeah.
are non-permissive that you're not allowed to share.
Yeah.
Distribute.
No.
And depending on the product you're shipping, you've got your own license agreement that you're giving to customers. There may be a license in one of these libraries that violates that agreement, and somebody will come knocking on your door with a
Yeah.
lawyer.
Well, I think you'll know pretty quick. But
Do you use any tools for that?
not that I know of. No.
There's 20 or so corporate tools, Sonar, others will
Yeah, I mean.
check your licenses.
So Sonar might have that. I'm not sure like the 100% the detail on that, but yeah, that's a really good point. Like these aren't, they're free to use, but again, like sometimes not. Like especially some are definitely not. You're paying for that. That's a really good point.
Anybody got any more questions? Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 5-minute comfort break. If you want to help yourself to another drink, use the bathroom, then we're back for a talk on extensions. So literally 5 minutes, be quick.
Didn't.
Okay. I hope everybody got a nice refreshment and a little break. Next up, Rusty is going to be talking about creating browser extensions. So please welcome Rusty.
This is about like creating browser extensions. So I'll start just by going over why I think extensions are actually a good topic to be looking into, why there's like demand in that market. And then we'll go through actually building a quick example extension, well, through the steps of how to do it just from a high level. So quick background on me. I'm a principal extensions engineer at a company called Carrot. You can find us on the App Store if you search for like Carrot Shopping, but it's basically a way to organize the things that you're looking to shop for. And this is on as a Chrome extension and a Safari extension. So alongside that, I've actually got a YouTube channel as well that focuses on development, but browser extensions in particular. And then in the last, 3 or so months, Google added web extensions as part of their GDE program. So I've been on that for like the last couple of months as well. But it's all still quite new. So extensions in general, I think, are a massively untapped market when you compare them to something like iPhone apps. You can just see here, like, the sheer difference between the two just shows this demand that's coming up when you look at things like the acquisitions that have happened recently. So the most well-known one is like Honey getting acquired by PayPal for like 4 billion. But even last week, Loom was acquired for almost 1 billion by Atlassian as well. But that's just some of the like things that have taken place already. You've got like 1Password and Grammarly that are valued like far higher than this. And then there's lots of other stories as well of extensions that have raised significant amounts. But alongside this, you've also got the indie hacking approach, which personally I find a lot more interesting. So because of the way that extensions are structured, you can target like a niche community quite well and like really add to the experience that they've had. So I'd really recommend checking out, there's an episode of the Indie Hackers podcast that goes into detail on Closet Tools, which is essentially an extension for people selling on Poshmark to be able to be more efficient with how they're like making their listings. Which is a really good example. But all of this starts to create this growing demand for extension developers, which is sort of what my YouTube channel focuses on. So when you look at extensions, there's just a sample here. They all fall into 3 or 4 main buckets, I suppose, of what they do. So they're either a content script that is adding like to the experience that people already have on the page. So Honey's a great example of that. So you can be browsing and you don't really notice it at all. But then when you get to the checkout page and they can offer you value, they pop in and like show you coupons and do it automatically. Then you can have other types of extensions that take over the new tab, which I think is like a massive area that is sort of underused really. So a really useful new tab extension can completely change the way that you actually browse and use the browser. And then you have other extensions that do some form of automation or web scraping. So if you ever have done web scraping before, you can sometimes like get detected as a bot. And when you are using a browser extension, it's a great way to sort of, not always, but sometimes get around that. So it can be a great place to be able to like have some sort of web scraping as well. But all of these extensions do like 1 or 2 of these things. Like 1Password is another good example of something that can just pop in and like add to your security, but while still being an extension. So that's just an example of some of the types of extensions. How do you actually, go about building one? Well, it all starts with the manifest file, which is very similar to like the package.json file we looked at a moment ago. So most of the things in here like form a very similar thing to like with a npm package, for example. So you have like the name and the description, which when you go to publish, for example, on the Chrome Web Store, these are pulled straight away into your package. So you want to make sure to name this something useful for your extension, because when people go to search for, like, to look for your extension, this is what's going to be used partially for, like, so you can appear in those results, which there's a character limit to these. And then, of course, with the versioning as well, it's quite flexible into how you can use this, but you just need to make sure that you, like, increment this each time. Otherwise, you won't be able to actually publish. And then we have things like the manifest version, which could be a whole topic in itself, but to make a new extension now, it has to be manifest version 3, which is recently, over the last few years, changed from version 2. And then we have our background. So these are service workers which are event-driven. So you can have, say you've got like a content script that's been injected into the page and your background. These can communicate with messages. So say you've got like a long-running task that you need to have inside your extension. You can send a message to your service worker that can perform that in the background and then send a message back when it's done. And then we have like a few different types of permissions. So in this example here, you can see we have host permissions using all URLs. This is like quite a broad permission that is essentially given your extension access to inject content into any single page that the user is on. So this can lead to like longer review times when you actually go to submit, but you can be really specific in this using like, so you put in a specific domain and like a wildcard star at the end. So you can use just the pages that you need. And that will obviously like speed up the time that it actually goes through review. And then that's pretty much all there is to the manifest file. So we just have permissions here, which we'll look at again in a moment. But this just is the types of the Chrome API that your extension can have access to. So once you've made a few extensions, this will become second nature really of how you would set up this file. So now we're going to go through the process of actually building a really simple extension here that is basically going to remove spoilers from the internet. So this is based on a YouTube video I made a year or so ago. So in this example here, I've just put in a keyword of World Cup, and it's going to blur out all of the like sad results that I get when I'm trying to watch England. So this is the flow of how you actually go about building that extension. So there's 4 main steps really for this extension we need to build. First, it's just setting up our manifest file, so making sure that we have all of the permissions that we need. Then we're going to have an options page. This is a place that users can go into, set the like keywords that they have for their extension to work, and that's going to use Chrome storage to like set that. And then we're going to use Chrome storage from our content script just to grab those permissions or those keywords, so we can actually like make our extension run. So this is the same manifest file we were looking at a moment ago. So like I say, these are all the things that we need to use. So on the permissions here, we're using just 2 permissions. One is the scripting permissions. This basically lets us inject a content script from our service worker. You could have your content script set up directly from a manifest file. So that would just be another entry we would make here. And that would just take in the like path to our content script. So just like a JavaScript file. And then similar to where we have host permissions here, the URLs you actually want that script to run on. But that would have made this a bit more difficult to read. So we're going to put it through our service worker instead. And that's why we need to use the scripting permission. And then we just have storage. So that basically means we can access and use Chrome storage. So after that, we just have our options UI. So there's a couple of ways you can have options appear. So this one here just appears as a modal, which we'll see in a moment on the settings page. But you can have this appear, say you've got lots of settings in your extension, you can have a full page version of this as well. And then you can get here just by going onto the extensions tray, click onto options, and that will take you there, or you can run it from within your extension as well. So say you've got a pop-up extension, so if you click on the actual icon up there rather than the settings, that could open your pop-up. And you could just add this on like a click event, and it will take them straight to the same place. So this is a really rough design of what you can actually do here. So in this example, we just have just a normal bit of HTML that is showing these settings just here. And that top part is just pulled in from our manifest file. So all we actually set is this bit. But if you had a full page, you have more flexibility in terms of how this will actually look. In this example, actually, for what we're looking at, we don't need to worry about the select type or replace with. So we're just doing the blur option. But this is just normal HTML here. So there's only one part here that's like Chrome extension specific, and that's when it comes to saving our options. So all we're really doing is as soon as the user hits save, we're just converting all of the input fields there into a JSON array, and then just passing it into Chrome storage. So you can see here we're just using Chrome storage sync and then setting this in under the keywords array, and then just get a callback there so you can like show some sort of confirmation message. When it comes to storage, there's 3 main types of storage that you can use within an extension. There's local storage, which is just specific to like the one device that the user's on. And then there's sync storage, which there's a few limitations around the size of the data that you can actually like save into that. but that can then sync across multiple devices that the user's logged into, as long as they have sync enabled. And then there's session storage as well. So in service workers, because they're event-driven, they can listen to messages. They might not have the full context of variables you might have set at the top of your page. So if you use session storage, you can just use this in your service workers, so you can make sure that that persists across your service workers. So once we have that, we just need to do only a couple more steps. So this is our service worker. So because we didn't add it into our manifest, we're now going to use the tabs API to basically add a listener whenever a new tab is opened or loaded or changed. So this is going to run here via this listener and send us back 3 things. So we've got the tab ID, which is basically the tab information of the one that's just changed. Then there's change info, which includes a few things like the status. So is the tab still loading or is it complete, which is basically what we want to check for. And then we get this object back that has a few more bits of information about the tab. One thing on this, though, there is a tabs permission which you can use as well, which is quite a special permission. So when you're building extensions, you always want to try and use as few permissions as possible. So if we had have included that in our manifest file, we'll get a bit more information here, such as the title of the tab and the URL. But for what we're doing here, it really doesn't make that much difference. So we're just using the tab here. And then all we do is check to see that the tab is complete. So this doesn't necessarily mean that all the content on that page has loaded. If they have dynamic stuff that's going to load in afterwards, that's something you need to look out for. But in terms of the actual tab itself, at this point, we can then use Chrome scripting to inject our content script. So we use execute script here just to send that straight through. And that just takes in the path of our content script. So in this case here, script.js, and then the tab ID. So you can use the tab ID that's passed in, or just use it from the tab object. But once we've done that, that means anytime the user's browsing on any single page, our content script's going to be there and ready to do any changes that we want. So in our content script, there's just one part of that really that is Chrome specific. The rest of it is just normal JavaScript. So you can see here, we're using Chrome Storage Sync to get the keywords that the user's saved. And then we just add this fallback here. So if no data's been saved, we're making sure that we return at least an empty array just to keep things consistent. So then after we've got that, we're sending it to this replace page words function. And that's just going to loop over, say you've got multiple keywords that the user's saved. We also make sure we catch every single one. And that just calls this function here, which very, very rough example here. So it's just getting any element on the page that might contain text, looping over those here, taking them both to lowercase. If there's a match, we're just applying some basic styling here just to add that blur effect. So in this case, making the text transparent and a little shadow around the text. And that is basically the flow of creating an extension. So you can see here, before, when we would go to that page, that text is showing. But if we go in there and add that World Cup as our keyword and then hit save, if we go back to the page, it's going to blur it out. So that is essentially how you build an extension. You can find all of the source code for the complete version of this on this link. And there's a hour-long YouTube video where I go through actually building that whole thing. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. If you want to look into building extensions more, I've put together a course that's basically all of the frequently asked questions I've got over the last 2 years of the channel. And I'll give you a coupon code where you can get access to that for free. I'll put it in the Discord. Otherwise, happy to come up to me afterwards and I can share that as well. But yeah, that's how to build extensions.
Cool. Thank you. Cool. I love it. There's always a world of money somewhere that you just don't realize exists, with this evaluation of these things. Does anybody have any questions? Right, okay, cool, awesome. I will just pass the mic around so if you can hand it on.
So what if you have a Chrome extension and you want to make it available on Firefox or other browsers? Do you have to repackage and rewrite everything, or is this somewhat reusable?
Most things are. Browsers are now working together to try and standardize most of the parts of the Chrome API. So there's a really good polyfill you can use, is to use the browser namespace instead. So it's if you look for browser MDM polyfill, That does like most of the things, especially around like messaging using storage. So I'd recommend probably starting with that and then building your extension. And then there's a few small changes to the manifest file. There's also some really good tools. There's a service called Plasmo that also helps you like work within manifest versions 3 and convert that way. So you only have to write it once. But it depends. There might be some like really specific APIs that you're using that might not work across both. But for Firefox, it usually does.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thanks for the talk. So normally extensions, the worry which I've seen both from the user or the organizations, if you're using it in an enterprise world, is the performance, right? So like if you are building something, generally the extension is running with the existing website or the web page. How do you test the performance or make sure that it's not impacting? I mean, is there any specific tool, or is it like generally you use like normal web profiling or anything?
Yeah, so most things you can run like unit testing over your like code before you like push it up, and the like tools around that are getting better and better all the time. Like you can now do end-to-end testing, say with like Puppeteer or something, all within GitHub Actions. So you can try and test things that way to see like if any changes that you pushed up are making certain sites slower. But because of the flexibility of it, you could be injecting into like some extensions work across every single website. So it's like really difficult to know if you've made a change on some like obscure site that could cause an issue. But typically, yeah, if you have like main functions of the extension that you want to test for, you can do it that way. But yeah, it's a tricky one to know for sure because of like how many different sites you could be like changing.
Yeah, I mean, is that part of the review as well? Like when they review your, let's say the extension, do they? So I noticed the security was there, but is performance also something which they keep in mind, like any of these providers?
I'd have to look into it more to be sure, but typically with the review, it depends on, like say you've passed the review initially, and then you make a big change, that probably will have a longer review process. But I think the main thing is like, if you're looking to only inject into like a specific website, then it's easier for them to test it. So that's why you'd always want to use as few amount of permissions as possible, especially host permissions.
Yeah. One last one, sorry. How much time does generally the review takes?
It can be anything from, I think the official guideline is like within 2 weeks, but I've seen reviews happen like in a couple of hours. Okay. So it depends on like how big the changes are.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. Yeah, you partially replied to that, but about the testing part. How do you test in the Chrome background environment? You said you use Puppeteer, but what about the versions? As I know, like Puppeteer is not upgrading as in the same line with Chrome.
So like to test the background part of the extension specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So for that, I'll try and do more like unit testing because you know roughly what's going to be within those. And there is like, I think there's a service called Jest Chrome or a package called Jest Chrome, which sort of mocks all of the APIs. It hasn't been updated in a while though. So that's probably one thing to look for. But yeah, it is more difficult to test the background, but you would try and just like move much as that as possible out into like smaller functions and do it that way. But yeah, hopefully there's more like developments in that in the future.
Anybody else got any questions?
So the keyword sync, so synchronized storage made me think of async and await, and that made me think why in these examples, these things that are saying provide a kind of just-in-time delivery and injection weren't included. So, is this something that is, in effect, pausing the execution of the whole page until everything on the service script is ready, or are there, is it doing something more subtle?
So for the content script specifically?
Yeah. So I could imagine there are some things, just take a particular type of word and replace it with another word. That will be pretty quick. So pausing the display of the whole website will be fine. But if it's sort of doing, it's asking Code GPT to rewrite it in a way that a 5-year-old would understand or something like that, that might take a bit longer.
Yeah, so it depends on the way you go to implement it. For something like that, what I would look to do, and I've seen some extensions do this, is even something like Toucan, for example, like it's a popular extension around like showing different languages. What they would do is something sort of similar to that example we saw there, but rather than replacing it, they would like put certain words like within a span tag, say, and then send a message through to the background to then do the long-running task, and then message back to the content script so that can then like complete it. The way like extensions like the content script are run in like an isolated environment. So, I mean, they're not always. You can sort of be injected into the main sort of frame of the page as well. But because of that, you don't get access to, say, like there's variables that are set within that page. The extension can't access those. So that's to like try and avoid it, you know, taking too long, like adding into the performance issues. But again, it can depend. There's so many things you can do with it. It's so flexible that there are some cases when, you know, you might, without realizing, like slow down the page.
Just a quick one. Are extensions available in mobile browsers or in like built-in browsers and apps and stuff?
So at the moment, they're not available in Chrome on mobile, but they are on iOS on Safari. And like just a couple of months ago, Firefox has added support on Android as well. So there are more ways you can sort of get into mobile now as well, but not on Chrome just yet.
Cool. Anyone from this side of the room want to ask a question? Cool. All right, Glenn.
About a year or two ago, people writing extensions for recruiters for LinkedIn to automate systems and stuff like that got into a lot of trouble with LinkedIn, who started to block them and then actually said that they were using them against their terms and conditions and actually threw the people off their platform for using the extensions. What's your view on that type of sort of interaction with the services that you're scraping against and the ethics of doing scraping or spamming things using extensions?
I mean, it's a great point. It's something the web store in particular is starting to like look at as well. I think that was a while ago. I've seen like some posts on the forum there around some people getting their extension rejected for certain reasons. But it's a tricky one because there's like conflicting sets of terms there. So you've got like LinkedIn. So it might be acceptable on Chrome, but maybe not on LinkedIn. But I think as well with something like that, it only really happens when you get to a big scale that you'd actually be seen. My view on that, though, it depends. If it's something that just is an action that you would normally take, but it's making it like faster or automating it in some way, but you would have done it anyway, I think that should be fine. The actual like sites might have a problem with it, but as a development point of view, I think that should be allowed. But there's like a gray area of when it's like, if it's taken data that ideally shouldn't be, then there's a problem there. But I haven't seen too many things like from an extension point of view where the web store doesn't let you put it out, for example.
Cool. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Cool. Cheers. So in a very slightly rushed prize draw, we've got a couple of software licenses to give away. Excuse my bad reading of, I give a really thick felt marker. Mamet, you won a Quokka license. Just see me after and give me your email. So you won a Quokka and WallabyJS license, and Ross, you won a Wallaby license. Thank you to the Wallaby team for giving those out to us. So a couple little kind of housekeeping announcements. The next event that EdinburghJS is running, as I mentioned, is the Code Jam. Please do come along to that and message me what you want to get out of it. I'm currently creating the code at the moment and just keen to make it a day that everybody enjoys and gets something useful out of. It's a bit of a first. I'm well prepared in advance, and I've literally just published the next event on the 21st of November, Tuesday 21st. So that is Mapping and Playwright with Rachel and Kat. Please do come along to that and RSVP. I'm sure it'll be a great event. After that, December, we're going to have a Christmas social. We usually get together in the pub. I will organise that soon and give details next time. In the meantime, we will post links on the Discord. So if you're not a member of the Discord server, I mean, it's not like the busiest server in the world, but we post links there. If you can find it at scottishtechnology.club, please just fire any questions you've got in there. I'm trying to be as helpful as I can, hooking up people with, not jobs, but like advice on finding jobs, freelance work, whatever. It'd be good to see you in there and see you hopefully on the 28th. Thank you. If you want to go to the pub, people often go to the Fountain Bridge Fox, just along the end of the road, after for a pint. Alan and I will maybe, probably be there afterwards. Yeah, cool. Awesome.